Welcome to the Wednesday stream. I hope everyone's having an awesome Wednesday morning. Hold on. I always forget to put on my little background lights. How's it going, everybody? How's it going, Silver Knight Dragon, Danarchist, Astro London, Dacapoleon? I woke up to this gem where I live in Canada. The leaders of Halifax kept the day a secret that it would raid homeless people encampments, not even telling social services about their intent to raid these encampments. We truly are living in a hellscape. Yikes. Wow. That's not the first time that's happened, right? That's not the first time that's happened. Canada's having a bad early winter. Yeah, I mean, we can see that a lot of adverse weather events, adverse weather effects, can be and have been, with surprising accuracy, been attributed to climate change. One of the main transport routes is cut for the next 3 months. Yikes. We expect more from our leaders. Yeah, we always should, right? We always should, but you would think. You would think. We have a special guest in studio today. Vaquita the cat has decided to join us. Sounds like it's time to rate our leaders to show our disgust in a video game. Hey Tendera, how's it going? Hey Darknet. Yes, we do have Vaquita the cat in studio. I got the kitty cam set up, so we should be good. We've got a few things to go through, and continuing the NYT report or journal report about climate migration, and the hypocrisy of the Biden administration. Let's get to it, folks. That's strange. Hold on. There we go. There we go. Perfect. Just let Bakita the cat peacefully chill there. But first, a couple of meme articles. Wyoming GOP votes to no longer recognize Representative Liz Cheney as a Republican. Huh. The Republican Party of Wyoming will no longer consider their sole U.S. House lawmaker, Representative Liz Cheney, as a member of the GOP. The latest reprimand for Cheney, who is a consistent critic of former President Donald Trump, despite voting with him over 90% of the time. She was one of the 10 Republicans who voted to impeach Trump in January following the insurrection attempt on the Capitol on January 6 by a mob of his supporters who were attempting to halt the counting of electoral votes, which found Joe Biden to be the victor of the 2020 presidential election. Cheney, the former vice president, the daughter of the former vice president Dick Cheney, has repeatedly defended her vote to impeach Trump. Last week, she re-upped the battle with the former president, calling him a dangerous and irrational man who is at war with the rule of law and the Constitution. Well, I mean, she's not wrong. She is bound by her oath to the Constitution. Wait. What? Cheney's press secretary, Jeremy Adler, told USA Today in a statement that it's laughable to suggest Liz is anything but a committed conservative Republican. True. True. She is absolutely a conservative Republican. She voted with Trump over 90% of the time. He's just ass mad that she voted to impeach him and was just living in the reality that he lost the election. That's really it. And apparently that's enough. She is bound by her oath to the Constitution. Sadly, a portion of Wyoming GOP leadership has abandoned that fundamental principle and instead allowed themselves to be held hostage to the lies of a dangerous and irrational man. Yeah, but that seems to be kind of like the theme, right? Trump is the GOP is Trump. At least the politician leadership. Common sense is not welcome in the Republican Party anymore. Yeah, they don't, well, it's not about common sense, it's about falling in line with the dear leader. A 31-29 vote Saturday in Buffalo, Wyoming by the State Party Central Committee, followed by votes by local GOP officials in about one-third of Wyoming's 23 counties to no longer recognize Cheney as a Republican. The Wyoming Republican Party also voted in February to censure Cheney for her vote to impeach Trump. Nice meme. These are great memes. Remember how it's supposed to be the radical left who doesn't like dissenting opinions? Nice meme. She was ousted from the House Republican leadership as the chair of the House GOP conference in May for her criticism of Trump. Again, the hypocrisy to attempt to paint the left as some type of censorious oppressor of dissenting opinions. Memo? Is it Memo? I always forget, and this is my fault, but I always forget if it's Memo or Memmius, who always says gaslight, obstruct, and project. That's it. That's it right here. We're being real time. The situation with Liz Cheney is like exactly that, right? The Republican Party doesn't take timely to actually question authority, though that's the agenda. Though that is the agenda they pushed aggressively. True. Being a follower is more important than following the law for Republicans. They are the party of law and order. They are the party of laws and order, after all. Well, they are, but not for them and not the laws that they don't like. They are absolutely the party of law and order, except when it's inconvenient. Except when it's inconvenient. I will do everything I can to ensure that the former president never again gets anywhere near the Oval Office, she said after she was stripped of her leadership post, third most powerful GOP slot in the House. Again, despite being with Trump over 90% of the time. Despite her criticism of Trump, Cheney remains the most conservative member of Congress. She has a 96 positivity rating from the Conservative Heritage Foundation. Nice. Which rates lawmakers based on their voting records' alignment with the think tank's political arm. According to an analysis by 538, Cheney voted in line with Trump 92% of the time while he was in office. There we go. Thank you. Bananarama, thank you for the follow. Appreciate that. Bananarama, I like that username. However, Cheney is now facing at least 4 Republican opponents in the 2022 primary, including attorney Harriet Hageman, who Trump has endorsed. The Casper Star Tribune, which first reported the news of the Wyoming's GOP's decision, reported that Hageman called the latest state GOP Central Committee vote fitting. Of course, he's a Trump stooge. Liz Cheney stopped recognizing what Wyomingites? Jeez, care about a long time ago. What? When she launched her war against President Trump, she completely broke where we are as a state. Wait, what? So even though she voted over 90% of the time, 92% to be exact, all of a sudden, she stopped recognizing what Wyomingites care about? Wait, what? So, like, the only thing that Wyoming people care about is Trump? Is that the implication here? What? Hey Thandera, how's it going? The chances Cheney gets elected are about as high as Joe Biden successfully making it through an all-nighter. Well, as a president, I assume he has multiple all-nighters. Anyways, Cheney is now serving as co-chair of the House Select Committee, investigating the events leading up to and surrounding January 6th. She and Representative Adam Kinzinger are the only Republicans on the committee. I would like to also reiterate that, the fact that a complete, open, bipartisan investigation committee was offered, complete with full, equal subpoena power. So I don't want to hear it. He's in bed by 8:30. I think you're just, like, making stuff up. That being said, I'm not disputing the fact that if your implication is that he's like an old man, I mean, yeah. Anyways, nice meme. Nice meme. The party that is supposed to be open to dissenting opinions is all well and good. You're allowed to say whatever you want as long as the things that you say are the things that I like. That's basically it. Oh, and make sure you never question the dear leader, okay? Make sure you never question the dear leader. You can vote with him 92% of the time, but the moment you question him, goodbye. But the moment you question him, you're out. Make no mistake, that's why they're ass mad. I thought they hate cancel culture. Gaslight, obstruct, and project. Remember that. Everything is fine as long as the things that happen are the things that they like. Correct, Darknet. Correct. So again, you could literally vote with Donald Trump 92% of the time. But the moment you go against him, the moment you go against the dear leader, I've never seen a more stronger projection than the GOP in my entire life. Yeah, Memmius or Memo for the record is completely correct. Gaslight, obstruct, and project. That's it. Make no mistake, they're only mad because they're not the ones doing it. They're not the ones in power doing it. It's honestly impressive. It's the most impressive, the fact that they have so many people behind them. At all. But hey. As long as you make the right gestures, and as long as you do the right dunks, and as long as you have somewhat of a pseudo kind of fast-talking intellectuals, then you're good. Then you're good. As long as you have the fast-talking pseudo-intellectuals, you're good. The GOP is the hologram ultimate 3D projection, true. Biden picks a rickety New Hampshire bridge as a scene to sell his infrastructure bill. Yeah, I think that you don't need to... I mean, it's good that they're doing like a lot of like PR to attempt to say like this is how it's helping you, but at the end of the day, this should have been like the most basic of basic things, right? The GOP is bereft of ideas. I mean, it's always it always seems to be the same thing, just repackaged, right? It always seems to be at the end of the day, the same things, just rebranded or repackaged or renamed or whatever it is, right? President Biden traveled to an old, unsafe bridge in New Hampshire on Tuesday to kick off an administration-wide tour aimed at selling the benefits of the newly signed bipartisan infrastructure law. I mean, good idea, but Jesus Christ. The tour is only a part of the push to tout the roughly $1 trillion the law provides for badly needed investments in the nation's transportation, broadband, water systems. Again, this is just like basic stuff, right? It's not that it's not needed. What I'm saying is, imagine needing to tour the country to tout what should be a normal process, a normal procedure for government, right? A normal procedure for government, upkeeping bridges, transportation, water systems, which by the way still have lead in in some areas, broadband expansion. Yeah, all of these things should just be like basic stuff. This isn't like a revolutionary thing, right? I'll disagree. They're full of ideas that have no basis in fact, logic, or reality. Well, no, I get what he's saying though, Silver Knight. Because like if you think about it, a lot of the things that they say are repackaged and redone old ideas, right? That are just the same thing, coming from the same core logic, just recycled. So I get what he's saying. Just adapted for the times, basically. The tour is part of a push to tout the roughly $1 trillion the law provides for badly needed investments in the nation's transportation, broadband, and water systems. Biden, who's down in the polls, is looking for a boost to help his fellow Democrats ahead of congressional election next year. Yeah, I've got this radical, like, big brain idea, right? Maybe, and hear me out, maybe they should, I don't know, deliver on one of their big ticket items. Maybe. Just saying. I mean, I'm just putting that out there. Maybe they should put forth things like student loan forgiveness. Maybe what about college to get young people out, tuition-free college? They had that on the board. Maybe, I'm just spitballing over here. Maybe, I don't know, provide universal pre-K. Maybe continue the child tax credits to put money in working families. Maybe, I don't know, start working on good green infrastructure. Just saying. Maybe provide more jobs doing that. Student loan forgiveness isn't a good use of federal funds. Well, I don't know about that. Hard disagree. Student loan forgiveness is like a kind of like a little jump start to the economy, I would say. It would be an economic stimulus. That's right. Money printer go brrr. Yeah, so instead of like providing important, or I should say at least trying to accomplish one of their big ticket items, they're touting something as basic as infrastructure as a big win, right? That being said, I'm not going to take away from the importance that it is, because it is necessary, it is important, and it is good that they do this. I'm just saying that this is, or should be considered something that is just kind of like par for the course for government, right? It shouldn't be like newsworthy, to be honest, right? Is what I'm trying to say. Speaking from NH-175 Bridge in Woodstock, New Hampshire, Biden talked about the importance of legislation to the American families, clean water, access to internet, rebuilding bridges. Everything in this bill matters to individual lives of real people. This is not something abstract. True. However, the fact that this has been ignored for decades and decades and decades is the problem here, right? That's the problem. Money printer definitely needs to go burr for average ordinary citizens and not wealthy and well-connected. True. Return on investment is usually good when you put that money, when you print out money, or print out, I use that very loose term, and put it in things that have a return on investment, like education, healthcare, things like that. That is, in and of itself, an economic stimulus and a net positive. It's not just a couple of old bridges. Let's have school lunches and some sort of public transportation for once. Absolutely miraculous. Among other things, I would be in favor of that. I do believe that there's some money for buses and things like that, but a full, efficient, and effective public transportation would be nice. But that's too much to ask for, I guess. This is not something abstract. As Biden said as light snow floated around him, the New Hampshire stop was the first on a tour that will take members of his administration as far west as San Francisco and as far south as New Orleans to promote the spending. Here's the view walking across the NH Bridge on the president is currently speaking on. Yikes.
Here's the president will be speaking from in a few minutes.
Yikes.
Lovely view of the river beneath it. And here is the lectern he'll be speaking from.
The bridge on which Biden spoke, crossing the Pemigewasset River, was built in 1939 and it's important for emergency vehicles, school buses, trucks carrying propane, lumber, and sand and gravel. It's one of 215 bridges in New Hampshire deemed structurally unsafe. 215 bridges in New Hampshire alone? Yikes. Biden signed the bill into law on Monday at the White House ceremony on the South Lawn that included Democratic and Republican supporters of the spending package. Look, we're at an inflection point in American history. This law meets that point. What? What? Bro, it's infrastructure. Like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? And just take that, all that money the federal government pays for suburbs, sprawl wastelands, and use that to pay for it. Yeah. What are you talking about? Like, this rhetoric is like... This rhetoric is the type of rhetoric I would use if I was going to tout a very aggressive climate change legislation or a very robust social safety net expansion. That's the type of language that I would use for that. Here he is using it for in like basic stuff that should have been taken care of. 215 bridges in New Hampshire alone are deemed structurally unsafe. I mean, like okay. Wait, why does he have to promote it though? I thought it passed. Maybe I don't know how bills work. No, it passed in there. You are correct. It passed. But he's trying to use this and trying to make a tour on how this will affect real American people because because the Democratic Party is going to try to use this as a way to promote the W's that they've done in an attempt to use that for the midterm elections. When you see these projects starting in your hometown, I want you to feel what I feel, pride. I don't... Okay. I get it, he has to do this because it helps the Democratic Party, which undeniably it does. And undeniably, this is necessary. This isn't me saying that, oh, we might as well not, this isn't me saying we don't need to do this, right? Or taking away the importance of meeting infrastructure needs. I'm just saying that to try to use this as a way of saying like we're at an inflection point in American history and this law meets that point. No, this is like a Tuesday afternoon in Congress, okay? That's how this should be treated. Correct. Look at all these crumbs we gave you. Make sure you say thank you on your way. It's about showboating. Hey, look at me. I did the bare minimum. Correct. That's why my point here is like to use this type of rhetoric to say that this was some kind of like like massive thing. Not really. This should have been like basic stuff. This should have been done. This should have been done decades ago, right? Like infrastructure upkeep is like kind of like a Tuesday afternoon, right? Tuesday afternoon session of Congress. Oh yeah, we need like X, Y, and Z for bridges and water and broadband expansion and things like that. Oh yeah. And then like move on. Like that's it. It just should be like par for the course. Ambassador Bridge connecting Windsor, Ontario, Canada to Detroit transacts roughly 25% of commerce between US and Canada. Well, yikes, and is disintegrating. Built in 1929 and it is disintegrating. Currently, the US couldn't be bothered to fund its replacement, which isn't open yet. Yeah, like again, decades ago of things that should have just been like normal operations of government are now being touted as a inflection point in American history. Trump built a wall, Biden built a bridge. That's actually not a bad... You know what? That's actually not a bad slogan. That's actually not a bad slogan. Unironically, that's not a bad slogan. Somebody get this to the Democratic Party. Trump built a wall, Biden built a bridge. Biden sadly will have to fight to get things done. The GOP wants Biden to quit, right? But the GOP is currently not the ones running the show, right? We can already discount the GOP, right? We know that they're not going to help. What if it collapses and gets someone killed? Yeah. Maybe building bridges is symbolic, maybe. But it's necessary nonetheless, right? All of this infrastructure stuff is just like par for the course. That being said, it is absolutely necessary. And that being said, it is absolutely good that it's being done. We finally built that bridge to the 21st century. True. Democrats rebrand Build Back Better to counter inflation concerns. I still don't understand why we're having this conversation. Democrats are refocusing their message on President Biden's Build Back Better bill in response to inflation concerns from voters and key centrists. Okay. I'm going to assume that this is in regards to centrist Dems like Joe Manchin, except it's not. I would say that conservative lawmakers, as Congress moves closer to final votes on massive, hey folks, massive $1.75 trillion over 10 years versus the rubber-stamped $9 trillion for the military that doesn't get any type of pushback, right? There's no inflation concerns, there's no spending concerns, nothing. It's fine. Greetings from Scranton, PA. How's it going, my friend? The White House and Democratic leaders have rebranded the legislation as an antidote to widespread price hikes, arguing that it would lower the cost of prescription drugs, childcare, and overall expenses related to raising families. Yeah, I mean, like, if you make sure that you get, like, for example, the child tax credits, the extra, like $300 or something a month, would indeed be a good thing and would indeed act as a economic stabilizer. So yes, it is correct. Alio with the 10 biddies, thank you so much, appreciate that. Dendera, a bridge already collapsed in Minneapolis, the I-35 bridge, and 4 people died 14 years ago and nothing fundamentally changed. Well, good thing President Biden's finally on the job in 2021. 14 years ago. Excellent job. I love cats. Same. We've got one in studio right now. I remember hearing about that bridge collapsing. That's terrifying. You want to fight inflation? Support Build Back Better, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer said on Tuesday. The measure calls for spending $1.7 trillion over a decade. Finally, they're finally starting to use this. They're finally starting to use this as a proper. How should I say this? They're finally illustrating this in the proper and full context, right? It's not just 1.75 trillion in one snap of a finger. It's over 10 years. It's over a decade. That picture is your cat, I'm guessing. Oh, it's not a picture. It's actually a live feed. She's just sleeping. She's sleeping very still. That's right. Through Illinois, there's a giant sinkhole. They have been rerouting traffic for 2 months. Yikes. Again, something so basic. Something so basic that should just be like par for the course for government. Like literally one of the few things that like shouldn't be a problem is things like infrastructure, right? But I guess you have to fight for that too. And it only gets addressed ever so often, which is beyond me, in my opinion. The measure calls for spending $1.7 trillion over a decade on a variety of democratic priorities, from healthcare subsidies to clean energy. It would give the government the power to negotiate prices for certain medicines, subsidize childcare, and extend cash payments for most parents with children under 18. Democrats aim to cover the cost of the social safety net package through taxes on corporations and more money for IRS enforcement. They also insist that legislation would be fully paid for ahead of a CBO analysis expected this week. But some Democratic conservatives say they're more worried that increased costs would hit numerous sectors of the economy. This has been the same conservative trope from time and time again when we try to do anything meaningful when it comes to progress. Anything, like even the most baby steps. President Joe Manchin, who has been sounding the alarm about inflation for months, declined to say on Monday whether the legislation addresses his concerns. I mean, he'll throw out, look, if everything is fine when it comes to like addressing how, the chips are gonna fall, he's gonna put some other random concern. Yikes. Dacapolion. Yikes. He told reporters that everyone's seeing the impacts of rising inflation. There's no one pushing back saying, oh, this is just a fluke, it's going to fly by in no time at all. Wait, nobody said that this was just going to fly. Wait, this is like President Trump logic, right? One day, it'll just be gone, like a miracle. That's not how this works. We know why inflation is happening, right? We know why inflation is happening, and we know, most likely, we're going to have to deal with it for a bit. I would say probably until like the next year. We've gone past that. Consumer prices jumped by 6.2% last month, the biggest inflation surge in more than 30 years. Yeah, except here's the thing. In any of those 30 years, have we had like an unprecedented like global pandemic that paralyzed our entire supply chains because we've done such a great big brain move to tie up like all of our ways that we get our products or goods through just in time supply lines, and then you're like surprised Pikachu face when a global pandemic disrupts the entire operation. And then you're like surprised Pikachu facing when like out of all the 30 years, it just happens to be the 2 years that we've faced an unprecedented pandemic. Like, are you kidding me? Of course. It's come to this point where both Republicans, and conservative Democrats do not care if you live or die. Cutting taxes on the rich too. I saw that. Darknet. It's unbelievable to me. This is just a fluke. It's going to fly by in no time at all. President Manchin said of his Democratic colleagues, we've gone past that. Consumer prices have jumped 6.2% last month, the biggest inflation surge in more than 30 years. About half Americans overall blame Biden for rising costs. Amazing! According to the Washington Post ABC News poll released this week. Amazing. Like, the propaganda to attempt to, like, shift blame for things that the Biden administration, generally speaking, like, has no control, like, very small control over. There are certain things that I'm sure the Biden administration can do, but overall, like, unless he like plans to have like control of the entire operations of the global economy, I don't get it. I don't understand what they want. Republicans, meanwhile, are seeking to create political pain for Democrats over inflation and other economic concerns. They continue to argue that Tuesday that the legislation would worsen inflation, citing climate policies that they would say raise fossil fuel energy costs. Okay, so, number one, the only thing that keeps the fossil fuel industry alive is government subsidies. Okay, the only reason it is even a viable business is because of all of these economic concerns. Of all of these economic subsidies, right? That's the only reason. Okay. Take that away. Let it die. Jesus Christ. What they fail to say is green energy would then become the replacement for fossil fuel in as many ways as possible. But they're against that. In my opinion, conservatives care whether you live or die. Corporates do not. Depends. Silver Knight Dragon, it depends. Depends. Senator and professional ghoul Rick Scott of Florida, the chair of the GOP campaign arm, predicted that inflation would end up haunting Democrats. Well, I mean, with propaganda so efficient that making up like trying to make up a crisis that has nothing to do with the Democratic Party. This is going to be devastating for them. It's devastating to poor families and people on fixed income. It's really going to hurt the Democrats. Okay, so then I would assume then you would be in favor of economic stabilizers which include giving people, working families, extra tax credits, making sure that things like education are free, making sure that things like VPK is free and universal. Oh, that's why I use a small c. Gotcha. They said they will fix the lead pipes in Michigan with the money we get, and if that's true, that's awesome. Well, yeah, I mean, like, again, this is like par for the course. This just shouldn't have been, like, a thing, right? The basic operations of government should have already addressed this. That being said, it is good. That being said, it is absolutely beneficial, and it is important that they do this. Democrats consistently cited a letter by 17 Nobel laureates in economics who say the Build Back Better bill would ease long-term inflationary pressures by investing in economic capacity and nudging Americans to participate productively in the economy. Right, here's the thing, like, a lot of Republican lawmakers try to tout, like, economic bona fides, but the majority of, like, economists, like, actually don't agree with them for the most part. They also refer to recent remarks by Larry Summers, a top economist in the Clinton and Obama administration, who said Sunday on CNN that the infrastructure and Build Back Better plans are unlikely to aggravate inflation. He argued that in contrast to the 1.9 trillion COVID relief law from March, the two other bills have tax increases that cover the expenditures and in addition include significant public investments that will raise the potential of the economy to produce more, which will lead to further tax revenue. Right, because when you invest in infrastructure, it's usually a net positive. For the most part, it's usually a net positive. Do people not realize that for 4 years of fuckwit who knows fuck all about anything and everything was president? This is Trump's economy at the moment. Trump surrounded himself with sycophant fuckwits who, in both his White House and cabinet, true. Oatmeal and coffee is ready, nice. Larry Summers is a fake economist. Senator Tom Carper said the analysis from Summers was criticized some of Biden's proposals, such as the COVID-19 rescue package, was the most encouraging report I've heard. Senate Finance Committee Chair Ron Wyden said provisions like lowering the cost of prescription drug prices help tamp inflation pressures. He said his proposed billionaire tax would be money in the coffers of the federal government. Tim Kaine said inflation is a concern that is being addressed in the Build Back Better package with proposals to lower costs for healthcare and education. Yeah, again, one of the things that you can do to stabilize the economy is give people subsidies when it comes to education, healthcare, food, housing, you know, the 4 things that we should kind of have as a basic necessity. We think there are provisions in there that would address people's concerns. In the House, which could vote on the social safety net bill as early as this week, Representative Susan Delben cited money for housing and childcare as cost cutters. I talked to a restaurant owner who hired someone and they said they couldn't afford to live anywhere near the restaurant, so they can't take that job. Housing is a real issue. Yeah, no kidding. Childcare is an issue. No kidding. So Build Back Better plays a key role. The chair of the moderate New Democrat coalition. Some economists, however, doubt that the proposal would help inflation in the near term. I think we're just kidding ourselves if we think, okay, if you pass legislation like this, it's time to implement. It takes time for programs to be set up, changes to be made. That's going to fix the inflation we're dealing with right here, right now at the end of 2021. A senior fellow at the Mercatus Center for George Mason University. Well, I mean, yeah, the reality is, the part that's true there is, that, of course, policies that are implemented now are not, you're not going to see the effects of these policies in the snap of your fingers, right? It's probably going to be a couple of years. Beckworth argued that the 1.7 trillion measure wouldn't tip the scale in either direction. If you look at what's really driving the inflation today, I think it's more of a pure pandemic effect. Yeah, no kidding. It's driven by a change in spending habits caused by the pandemic, and as the pandemic ends, those things are going to fade. Right, like I said, this is nothing to do with Biden's policies or lack thereof. The inflation right now is mostly being caused by the pandemic. Is correct that the BBB isn't inflationary though? Yeah, I agree. These are just the usual tropes that conservatives use to stifle any movement in any direction towards like progress or anything remotely close to what could be conceived as a social spending bill. Even the name, and they'll start raising questions about how much it's going to cost, and if that doesn't work, then they'll start talking about inflation, or even if that doesn't work, they'll just say something about socialism and move on. What happens if we just ignore inflation? It depends what's causing it, right? Like in this case, as we recover from the pandemic, it's just gonna stabilize. I would say again, probably we're gonna have to take like another year or so of this, like they do with any tax cuts they get. Yeah, exactly. The reality is, it just depends on what is the source of the inflation. But I mean, I suspect that in this situation, the inflation is caused by the pandemic, which will eventually kind of stabilize itself. I would say so. Summers is a big proponent of the Repeal Glass-Steagall Act, and he's infamous for saying that the developing world was underpolluted and a logical dumping ground. Holy yikes, Batman. Jesus Christ. What an absolute asshole. Fuck that guy. Jesus Christ. Well, thanks for bringing that to my attention, Kinetic Pause. Yeah, fuck that guy. It'll take time for the curve to bend in the right direction again. Yep. Summers is very much a DLC type. Summers is very much a DLC type corporate Clinton era Democrat. Gotcha. Sounds like a you problem. Washington town seen 75% of homes damaged by floodwaters. 3 out of every 4 homes in Washington town of Sumas have been damaged by floodwaters. Sumas Mayor Kyle Christensen said his 1,600 residents have been without power for more than 24 hours. City officials said later on Facebook that workers are still trying to restore power to a few parts of the city, and said crews were having issues getting to areas that still need the power back on. Christensen said he had expected a majority of roads to be back open Tuesday night or Wednesday night. There have not been any reports of deaths or injuries. Monday's rescue missions were largely undertaken by boats. Christensen said, but with the waters receding on Tuesday, the city had to rely on large equipments like tractors to reach stranded people. Stephanie Kohler told CNN affiliate Como, K-O-M-O, a boat picked her up from the port. She was taken to another boat and then was taken in a tractor bucket to a bus. We were scared. I mean, it's our first flood. Yeah. She planned to spend the night at a shelter with her 13-year-old daughter. Kohler said that she and others had to put down sandbags, but they were actually being pushed from people's houses down the river. Yikes. Sumas is on the border with Canada, about 115 miles north of Seattle. About 10 miles to the south, police in Everson were searching for a man who reportedly was swept away by floodwaters while calling his family for help. Yikes. Jose Garcia, 59, called his family early morning and reported that he was being swept into a field, according to a news release from Everson Police Chief Daniel McPhee. His son reported his father's phone call to 911 after they were disconnected. The man's family reported he was driving to work and had gone through a road closure barricade eastbound on East Main Street. From the son's report, it appears that his vehicle swept into a field that is north of East Main Street. The release said he told his family to get out of the vehicle and was swept away by the current north into the field. The release said his son told police that they were disconnected, his father saying he was clinging onto bushes or trees in the field. Yikes. Emergency personnel were not able to send a rescue vehicle at the time of the call. At the time the call came due to fast-moving currents. According to the release, about 2 hours later, they were able to send out a crew in a boat. One resident called 911 said he heard yelling in a field behind his home, but was unable to understand what the person was saying. Washington is under a state of emergency following days of severe wind and rain leading to extensive flooding in parts of the state. Yeah. Hey Tuskcats, how's it going? I'd prefer to talk about whatever I want to talk about. Trump has always had a huge bulge in his pants that looked like a diaper. True. Tuesday, Whatcom County said residents of Lumi Island should shelter in place, and Lumi Peninsula residents should prepare to evacuate. A road off the peninsula was likely to flood, Tuesday, officials said. The soggy conditions triggered mudslides in the region, prompting the closure in both directions of I-5 in near Bellingham, according to a Washington State Department of Transportation. The highway is a major thoroughfare stretching along the west coast from Mexico to Canada. Wow. Tuesday night, the Transportation Department tweeted crews continue to work in clearing debris of NB northbound I-5 at Nole Road. Today, some of the work includes assessing the hillside and removing down trees. This means we're one step closer to opening the highway. We don't have an exact time, but things are looking better. Yikes. This is, again, what we're looking at when it comes to climate change, right? Unprecedented floods, wind and water damage, people getting swept through currents. Every state has their own set of insane, but preventable problems. That's right. Yeah, because like it turns out, climate change doesn't really care, does it? Climate change has a way of affecting the entirety of the planet. Some ways it affects, in some states it affects it differently, in others they have their own different kind of problems to deal with. In the Midwest, I suspect that they're going to see a lot of kind of like heavy droughts and heavy rain and pluvial flooding, versus somewhere like in the East Coast, you'll see a lot more damage due to hurricanes being more intense. You know, just to give you another idea, in the Pacific West Coast, or Pacific Northwest, you will start seeing like things like intense wildfires just become, or are becoming, the norm. I thought I heard you say 3 out of 4 houses in Washington State. No, 3 out of 4 houses in Sumas. So 75% of 1,600 residents. 75% of 1,600 residents, that's still a lot. That's still a huge number. So it's about 1,200 if we take 75%. I think if I did the math correct, it's about 1,200. That's a lot. In Skagit County, Skagit County, residents of Mount Vernon were advised on Monday to evacuate ahead of flooding on the Skagit River, but a flash flood watch for an area of town was cancelled Tuesday, according to a tweet released by Seattle's National Weather Service. A bulge in a dike was evaluated by the Army Corps of Engineers, which determined the structure was not damaged. The Dike District reports that the remaining concern is for the damage to the riverbed, not the diking system. Category 5 Atmospheric River. Yikes. The Skagit River near Mount Vernon topped major flood stage 32 feet Monday and was at 36.52 feet around noon, according to the National Weather Service Advanced Hydrological Prediction Center. The river appears to have crested and could fall below minor flood stage by Wednesday afternoon. Parts of the city, about 60 miles north of Seattle, are protected by levees, and residents in those neighborhoods are advised to keep an eye on emergency notifications. Mount Vernon is under a flood warning until late Thursday, according to the National Weather Service. The area will dry out with the end of the rainfall for a few days. However, with so much water in the system, it will take some time to drain the floodwaters. In addition, the dams on the Skagit were able to absorb a significant part of the flood, but with reservoirs near maximum pool levels, that water must start being released. 14 counties that are covered by Governor Jay Inslee's emergency proclamation: Clallam, Grays Harbor Island, Jefferson, Lewis, King, Kitsap, Pierce, Mason, San Juan, Skagit, Snohomish, I can't pronounce any of these names, Thurston, and Whatcom. The severe weather emergency order directs that plans and procedures to the Washington State Comprehensive Emergency Management Plan be implemented. In Clallam County, 10 people, including 4 children, were rescued from their homes as flooding encroached on a residential area near forts. Evacuations were conducted with the assistance of the Coast Guard helicopter crews, the agency said in a news release. All residents in the area were accounted for. Severe weather is also impacting power infrastructure, leaving more than 30,000 customers in the state without power as of 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Wait, Eastern Time? 9:30 p.m. Tuesday. Yep. The flooding is also affecting Abbotsford in Canada downstream, which is an exurb of Vancouver and has a population of over 100k. Yikes. You said my name in that paragraph. My sound went off. Later, everyone. Well, thanks for stopping by. Appreciate that. Yeah, this is awful, Tendera. Oh, it gets better. It gets better. Kruger Rock fire grows to 133 acres as night falls on Estes Park. A wildfire whipped by strong wind on the south edge of Estes Park is prompting the immediate evacuation of the area. As of 6:30 p.m. Tuesday, Larimer County fire officials estimated the Kruger Rock fire was at 133 acres with 15% containment, and fire crews will remain on site overnight. The SS Park Emergency Communication Center said mandatory evacuations have been ordered for residents and businesses in the area of Little Valley due to immediate and imminent danger. The emergency message said people in the area should not delay leaving and not gather belongings or make efforts to protect their homes. Jesus Christ. There was a red flag warning for most of the Front Range until 5 p.m., but the warning area runs just up to, but not in Larimer County. Still high wind, low humidity, and unusual warm temperature will create increased risk of wildfire. Well, unfortunately, it's not like unusual anymore. Needless to say, as we've covered multiple wildfires, and will continue to stress the effects, importance, and consequences of not addressing climate change. This is just going to be the normal news cycle. This isn't. It's no longer unusual. Khajiit will listen until all the sugars of the world turn sour. Hey, Kal-El. Aw, man, Skyrim released an update, I think, a couple days ago. Have been playing that game since what? 2000. Man, I forgot when Skyrim came out. Morning. I've been sick all week so far, no bueno. Ah, man, that sucks. Is it just me, or is that like a common thing that's been happening? That's really strange. My parents both got really sick. Apparently, well, thank goodness, nothing to do with COVID. But it did seem to be viral because apparently my mom had it, was very sick. My dad has it now, very sick. My friend's dad is also very, very sick. Yeah, it's just strange. That's very strange. The best Bethesda franchise is Fallout, actually? Oof, I don't know. That being said, Fallout is a great game. New competition. Let's see which country can have the biggest climate fuel disaster. The short answer is everybody. But I would say like if you're talking about the most vulnerable or the ones who are going to take the most damage, I would probably point to the island nations. Fallout and Skyrim, same planet, true. Fallout leads to Deathclaws evolving into dragons, I'm sure. Yeah, they're the same, kind of. They're made by the same people. The flu, maybe? I have no idea. APFSD, how's it going, by the way? I have no idea. I don't know if it's the flu. My mom said it was viral, or at least that's what the doctor told her. It was some type of like viral thing. Maybe it was a really bad cold. I don't know. Kids in the future will be playing Fallout 4 as a guide on how to survive in the climate apocalypse wasteland. True. I'm seeing a doctor later, but we'll see what's up. Oh, that's good. I lost my voice, but it's back now. That's also good. It's a step in the right direction. It seems like it could also just be a really bad cold because, like, remember, we've been in pseudo lockdown, and for the most part, we've been wearing masks for a while. So I suspect if you do get sick, it's like it'll come back with like a vengeance, right? Since like colds and flus haven't really been a thing for like 2 years. I don't know, I'm just speculating. I'm not a doctor. Yeah, I'm basically going to the doctor to appease my work since I've been out. I think it'll sort itself out. Yeah. I always thought that was just kind of weird. Imagine needing like what is this, like kindergarten? Need your doctor's note? I always found that bizarre for work. I'll take New Vegas over Skyrim. Oof, I don't know. They haven't asked for a note or anything. My boss acts like a mom to me sometimes. Oh, okay. Okay. Michigan has masks in schools and over 70% vax, but leading the country in cases, right? Cases. And also depends on how you make that, and how it also depends on what you're looking at. Is it like the entire state of Michigan? Are you talking about just a county in Michigan? And yeah, like cases are also not what we really should be saying is like, do those cases increase the hospitalization, considering the fact that most are vaxxed and most have masks, right? Would you say that your boss? Oh my god. New Vegas with mods, please. Oh man, is chat rebelling against me? What is this? What is this anti-Skyrim rhetoric I'm seeing? Shame. Shame. Skyrim is good, just New Vegas with mods is good too. Ah, the enlightened centrist position. I see you. The enlightened centrist position. I see you. I see you. Larimer County and Estes Park fire officials are investigating a single-engine air tanker that they believe crashed near the Kruger Rock fire on Tuesday night, according to the Larimer County office. Yikes. According to emergency broadcast, the Estes Valley Fire District, the plane is believed to have gone down at 6:45 p.m. south of Little Valley Drive, which is just off Fish Creek Road. Fire crews and emergency officials were responding to the crash and were searching the area between Chalet, Colorado camps, Rockwood Lane off Colorado Highway 7, and Black Squirrel Road off of US 36. Yikes. I'm over here playing VR No Man's Sky instead of laughing from the sky. I'm reading the local article about it. Yeah, this is horrifying. Welcome to the new norm, folks. Welcome to the new norm, where we report on massive wildfires on the norm on the weekly. Massive wildfires to 133 acres, which is pretty big, in my opinion. Cool. Yep, this is just the consequences of not addressing climate change. Imagine Dragons start playing Welcome to the New World. The New York Times COVID data tracker currently has Michigan with the nation's highly daily case average per 100,000 people. Oh, per cat. Okay. Okay. I can never get behind the combat in Skyrim. It seemed kind of clunky, and that's enduring to a certain extent, but the Fallout games have comparatively more crisp combat. True. Welcome to the new age. Ah, that's exactly what I was trying to get at, Tendera. Right. Exactly. True. True. I just don't get it. It's free. It's available. It's FDA approved if you take the Pfizer one. Jesus Christ.
3 degrees. It can be the difference between snow and sleet, wearing a jacket or not. In your day-to-day life, it may not seem significant, but 3 degrees of global warming would be catastrophic.
Heat waves, droughts, extreme precipitation, even fire. 3 degrees of warming is really disastrous.
The scary thing is, the world is well on its way there. Since the Industrial Revolution, the Earth has warmed between 1.1 and 1.
Yeah, I mean, the nihilist version of me, I don't know if the term is nihilist, but like the doom-pilled version of me says kind of moves in that direction. Every time I read one of these wildfire articles, I think about how all of this could have been prevented in the effing 70s, and I just get a small, just a teeniest voice in my head that for one short moment tells me that we kind of deserve this for our dumbfuckery. Yeah, I mean, but like at the same time, like this isn't just like this isn't just like human, like the entirety of the human race, right? Who just like decided this. This is a very specific group who decided, despite knowing and despite having all the information available and studies and data for decades, have opted to fill their pockets instead of owning up to it.
0.3 degrees Celsius.
This is a problem that babies you pass in the street will have to live with.
Children born today are up to 7 times more likely to face extreme weather than their grandparents. If global temperatures do rise by 3 degrees, what would their world look like? Rising sea levels, desertification. Hollywood has always enjoyed imagining the end of the world. While blockbusters like this are clearly fiction, this film will show the scenario we all face, unless more drastic measures are taken to stop burning fossil fuels.
I'm a company and I pollute, but I don't pay for it, you do. A carbon dividend means I...
In some parts of the world, the effects of inaction are already clear.
True.
The slums of Bangladesh's capital are filling up with climate migrants. Minara comes from Bola district, an area in southern Bangladesh. There, like many other parts of the country, rivers swollen by heavier rain and melting Himalayan glaciers are washing away people's homes. Many, like her, have lost everything.
বোলার বাড়ি তো জায়গা জমিনের শেষ ছিল না, অনেক জায়গা জমিন ছিল, অনেক ফসলের জমিন ছিল, বাড়ির জায়গা অনেক ছিল, বাড়িতে অনেক ফলমূল গাছ বিভিন্ন ধরনের অনেক কিছু ছিল, সব কিছু নিজের গাছের জিনিস মানে খেতে পারতাম। এখন তার ওগুলা খাইতে পারে না, ওগুলো তো নাই, ভাঙ্গা দেওয়ার পরে ঢাকা চলে আইতে হয়েছে। বাড়িতে থেকে তো অনেক আরাম ছিলাম, মানে খুবই খারাপ লাগতো, মানে সহ্য করার মতো না, ঘর দুয়ার ভাঙ্গা নিয়ে চলে যাওয়ার মতো টাইম ছিল না।
1.1 to 1.3 degrees of global warming has already transformed Minara's life. It's one of the reasons why so many migrants like her are moving to the city each year. Nearly 400,000 according to the last estimate. And climate models show there could be much worse to come. Climate scientist Yuri Rogol has spent the last 10 years modeling future climate scenarios for the United Nations.
The models we use to carry out this exercise really represent the state of the art of our current knowledge of climate change and where we are heading.
Yuri's projections use...
Correct. ExxonMobil is especially to blame for this. They pioneered the strategy of misinformation and lobbying that has led to this mess. True. Particularly with their studies that actually showed where we were heading back, I believe, in the 70s or 80s. They knew, and so did Shell. There is I believe, a recent article a couple months ago that came out that Shell actually had its own studies from the 70s. If I'm correct, I believe it's Shell.
Data collected by hundreds of scientists around the world.
Here, this is the 3 degree level, And so there is at least a 1 in 4 chance that under current policies we would hit 3 degrees by the end of the century.
This is just one of the scenarios Yuri looks at. Another one imagines that all policy promises are kept. The most optimistic assumes that all promises have been kept and net zero targets are met.
Where our best estimate ends up around 2 degrees at the end of the century, there is still a 1 in 20 chance that we end up with 3 degrees instead. One wouldn't be entering a plane if there is a 1 in 20 chance that the plane will crash.
Right.
A rise of 3 degrees would affect everyone. Even wealthy cities and rich countries wouldn't be immune to the consequences. European capitals like Paris and Berlin would bake under more extreme heat waves. Frequent storm surges in New York could turn parts of the city desolate.
In many ways, cities magnify, intensify climate events. Cities are hotter than the places around them. They tend to be more vulnerable to flooding, and you can get a really bad event in a city in a way that you can't in the countryside.
And because of their denser populations, disasters in a city affect far more people. Some cities might be badly prepared for the changes coming, but they have the means to adapt.
Cities tend to be wealthier than surrounding places. They have a lot of amenities. A city that has taken seriously the risks of a 3-degree world wouldn't necessarily be a worse place to be in a 3-degree world. But a city that hasn't prepared for these sort of eventualities, that might be a really nasty place.
So far, many developed cities have gotten off lightly, but some rural parts of the world are suffering disproportionately. Smallholders, small-scale farmers, are particularly vulnerable to climate change.
That's right.
And there are over 600 million around the world. Smallholders with farms under 2 hectares produce around a third of the global food supply. Central America's dry corridor supports a mix of small holdings.
Yep, we're about to read some of that coming up. Haze misinformation, all of them new. Yeah, to a degree. To a degree. At least I'll probably be dead by the time it all really goes to shit. I mean, there's a lot of things that are going to happen, are happening right now that we will very much well be alive for.
Medium-sized farms. Sandwiched between the Pacific Ocean and the Caribbean Sea, the area is prone to droughts. Israel Ramirez Rivera is a smallholder in Guatemala. Here, climate change is making the dry seasons longer and more severe.
Digamos que esta es la mazorca más grande que pudo dar esta parcela.
He depends on his crops of corn and beans, but they're getting harder to grow.
Las montañas a nuestros alrededores no nos tenían casi alimentos nativos. Cual ahora ya no hay, ¿verdad? Por el tema del cambio climático que viene afectando, ¿verdad?
Nearly 2/3 of the smallholders in the dry corridor now live in poverty.
El impacto que nos ha
Oh,
dado
little
es de
duckies.
que, a raíz de todo eso que ha venido a la desnutrición de
That's
los
right.
niños, se nos han muerto varios, a los cultivos más que todo, porque la canícula viene más a pegarnos más duros. Entonces ahí se nos marchita y ahí ya no hay tales de que vamos a producir un alimento en abastecimiento, ¿verdad?
Severe droughts in Central America are now 4 times more likely than they were last century.
Muchas familias de acá, pues, a unos han intentado migrar en Estados Unidos.
Have tried to. Not they have.
La
Have tried
desesperación
to.
económica, ¿verdad? Incluso aparte deudas. Todo eso ha motivado de que los...
Yes, that is true, but it's caused mostly by the inability to grow food, and that's mainly caused by the inability sorry, and that the inability to grow food and grow crops and feed themselves is caused by climate change. Is getting exacerbated. Coffee will also go to extinct due to climate change. That is, well, yes, most coffee species will go extinct. There are like 1 or 2 that may survive, but they're usually not as good. From my understanding of how that's going to affect coffee, I could be wrong, but for the most part, yes, homonyms.
Los vecinos de esta localidad emprendan su viaje.
Migration from Guatemala to the United States has quadrupled since 1990.
For my wallet, I just wanted 3 things. Had to be simple, really
stop
easy to
trying
access.
to sell me wallets. I don't care.
This has been due to climate change. But longer droughts would force even more to move. In a 3-degree world, annual rainfall in this region could drop by up to 14%. At 3 degrees, over a quarter of the world's population.
I see your
could
cute
endure
animal video,
extreme
Darknet,
droughts.
and we'll do that cute animal video after this because I think it's necessary after this one.
For at least a month of the year. Northern Africa could see droughts that last for years at a time. But for some, too much water will be the problem. 10% of the world's population lives on a coastline that's less than 10 meters above sea level.
True.
For these coastal inhabitants, a 3-degree world would spell disaster. By 2100, global sea levels could have climbed by half a meter from 2005 levels. Low-lying cities like Lagos would be especially vulnerable, with up to a third of the population displaced. And in Fiji, rising waters are already upending lives.
You can see the graveyard there. It's all underwater now.
What?
Due to this rising sea level and climate change.
The village of Toguru in Fiji is being swallowed by the sea. Barney Dunn, the village headman, has seen over half the village disappear. Relatives' houses have been abandoned and family graves are now underwater.
We've been asked by the government to relocate, but no one wants to relocate because we have our great-great-grandparents down there in the sea.
Yeah, like again, like the idea that like people are just like, oh yeah, we're just gonna get up and leave. We're just gonna get everything together and just move. Is just not true. The reason why these folks are leaving is because they have no other choice. That's it. Even despite half their town being underwater, they're still staying there. A lot of like these migrants are leaving because they have no other choice.
This is the place we've been brought up in. It's not easy to live.
Past attempts to build a seawall haven't worked. But Barney sees building a new one as the village's only hope.
If they do that, maybe we can save whatever is left. But if we don't have the seawall, then it will keep eroding, and time will come, maybe in 10-15 years, Tongoro will be all eroded.
Rising seas also mean storms cause more floods.
Yeah, like I said, the most tough and hit places will probably be the island nations. That's right, Homonym. That will be like a legitimate interaction in 2050. I did the math and I live in the area of the continent that will survive a 3-degree rise. Not sure if that's good or bad though. Yeah, like, okay, so just to be clear, you may, like, there are problems that will come about. So for example, you will see if you don't live in in an area where sea level rise will get you, something else will. That's the problem. And if all else fails, then pretty much like everybody's going to be huddled around those areas. Doomer build, yep, it's getting there. Head to the mountains, folks.
And many more countries could suffer. The Philippines and...
Like, for example, even if you live in the mountains to avoid sea level rise, and you live in the mountains where it might be cooler, because of the elevation, there are other problems, especially with adverse weather patterns that are causing mudslides in these mountainous areas that are also causing tornadoes in these mountainous areas that weren't there before. So like, it's also a propensity for fire as the dry underbrush of mountain areas become more susceptible to that. I mean, yeah.
Myanmar are just 2 countries that will also see an increase in storm surges in a 3-degree world. To escape, many will move, often to urban areas. Half the world's population already lives in cities, almost a third in slums. For them, a 3-degree world could be deadly. Minara has moved to Dhaka to escape the impact of climate change. But life could get even worse for her.
অনেক কষ্ট হইতেছে দিনে যখন রৌদ্র উঠে তখন অনেক কষ্ট আবার রাতও অনেক গরম লাগে অনেক রাতও ঘর ঠান্ডা হয় না তাপমাত্রাটা দিন দিন বাড়তি আছে মানে এখন কি আরো বাড়তেছে সামনের দিকে আরো বাড়বে এখনো থাকতে পারতেছি না সামনের দিকে কিভাবে থাকুম
Dhaka is getting hotter. In the last 20 years, the average daytime temperature has crept up by nearly half a degree.
Jesus Christ.
Days that approach 40 are now being reported.
Yikes.
And high so-called wet bulb temperatures are on the rise. A wet bulb temperature is a measure of heat and humidity.
Which is really
Humans
bad.
cool themselves by sweating. But in these conditions, when relative humidity is near 100%, sweat doesn't evaporate well. So people can't cool down, even if given unlimited shade and water.
At a high wet bulb temperature, the body can't lose heat, and so it gets hotter and hotter. And the body is designed to work at a given temperature, and if it gets too hot inside, you will die.
If the government did
Whoa.
one thing right this year...
Whoa. So now it's trying to offer me free dental alliance? What?
The human limit for wet bulb temperatures is 35 degrees Celsius, around skin temperature.
Yeah, that's right. A wet bulb temperature is like actual fallout level shit. Like people will die of those temperatures. Yeah. 100%. I know there'd be people who see this shit going on and say, I think I could make money from all this suffering. Yeah, that's already happening. That's already happening. Like, unironically, they're way ahead of you, my friend, in a very sadistic way. They're already ahead of you. They're already putting the futures of water up for bets on the market. It's a thing. It's a thing. People are already betting on the scarcity of water.
Dhaka will have a much higher chance of reaching dangerous wet bulb temperatures if global warming reaches 3 degrees.
You can't really adapt to that. You have to get out. If the temperature is so high that you can't work, can't do hard manual labor outside for significant parts of the year, then many places will become functionally no longer part of the economy.
Correct.
Jacobabad in Pakistan and Ras Al Khaimah in the United Arab Emirates have already recorded deadly wet bulb temperatures. More of the tropics and the Persian Gulf, as well as parts of Mexico and the southeastern United States, could all get to this threshold by the end of the century. Climate modeling might show us the weather, but it doesn't show us its other effects on society. Established migration patterns could change. Climate disasters may exacerbate reasons people cross borders.
Correct.
Within countries, more people will move to cities. In a 3-degree world, tens of millions of people a year could be displaced by disasters made worse by climate change.
When people are displaced by climate,
what kind of person would it take to put bets on water? I struggle to comprehend the mind of someone so cynical. Well, then ask yourself, what kind of, just as a rhetorical question, what kind of system would encourage that type of behavior?
They may well go to cities because cities are the places that attract people from the countryside already. A lot of people who can get to the developed world, not least because the developed world tends to be less hot, will give that a go.
As migration
And
around the
even
world
then,
increases.
like, the reality is, there's no other choice, right? Like, you have to leave. You have to leave. There's no option for you to stay there, right? Like, the folks in that island, the Fiji island, that we just saw, half of their stuff is literally underwater, and they're still refusing to go. So the people that are leaving is because they have no other option. That's it. Like, they can't stay there.
There could be more competition for fewer resources. Water, already a highly contested resource, will be a focal point. Turkey's new Ilusu Dam has reduced the flow of water into Iraq. China
Yikes.
lays claim to rivers vital to India and Pakistan.
The prospect of a water conflict makes people very uneasy.
China, by God, made in China!
How national tensions would exacerbate those sorts of reactions in a 3-degree world is the sort of thing that no one should really want to find out.
Correct. It turns out, and I know this might be like a radical concept, but it turns out people need food and water. I thought it was you guys talking about your favorite video games. I didn't know how cartoonish reality was really. I mean, like, yeah, it's not that far from a possible future. If, like, okay, obviously it's like the over exaggerated version, but it's not really that far from the worst case scenarios, right? It's not really that much far. Anything that has value can be traded. If I can trade it, it can be bought and sold in the future. Hence, I hold water stocks. Yeah, but is that really the morality that we want to stoop down to, where we're betting on the futures of water? Is that really where we want to be at? Exactly what CME Group did recently in California when it launched the world's first futures market for water in December of 2020. Put simply, a futures market lets people place bets on the future price of water. Nice. Oh, sorry. Here. Hedging bets against the price of water, which obviously is in a kind of in the system that we're working with, is determined by, I assume, the supply. There are areas renting air and ice from parts of the world. Yeah, and that's a nightmare. That's dystopic. That shouldn't be a thing. Yeah, the Nestle CEO would disagree. Correct. What a supervillain you have to be. What a supervillain you have to be like be the CEO of Nestle. Nestle is also the company that has been admitted to using child slave labor, if I'm correct.
I think you'd have to be incredibly sanguine not to think that the sort of climate extremes that we talk about in a 3-degree world wouldn't lead some places to the brink of societal collapse.
Correct.
Those lucky enough to escape unrest would still have to adapt to a radically different world.
People can adapt to climate change in all sorts of ways. One of the most obvious ones is air conditioning. But other ways to adapt at a local or regional level, I mean, one of the most obvious is diversifying agriculture. There are physical things you can do, like seawater.
Yeah, but this is like, no. the best thing that we can do is attempt to do everything we can, apart from mitigation and adaptation efforts, is to do everything we can to decouple ourselves from fossil fuels in every way possible and as quickly as we can. And things that are available today should be, in a perfect world, should be deployed 10 years ago. I almost feel like the country I live in is prepping for climate disaster inadvertently. We have more wind. We have enough wind turbines to produce power than we consume, plus 3 solar farms under construction. We have 800 hectares of hydroponic greenhouses and small enough scale manufacturing to produce pretty much any vital goods we may need. That's pretty cool. Generally speaking, renewable energy such as solar and wind and hydroelectric are pretty good, and you can always be prepared to disperse any excess. Nobody did anything about the child labor thing, if I remember correctly. Yeah, they just like shrugged it off and it was all cool because, yeah. Yep, all devoted to the just-in-time economy. Correct.
The fact that people can adapt and that adaptation will reduce suffering doesn't mean that it will eliminate suffering. Suffering is built into this whole process of heating up.
I think the problem with nuclear is the time limit that it will take to get nuclear on board. Furthermore, we also need to have a plan when it comes to the nuclear waste, an effective plan when it comes to nuclear waste. But those nuclear plants that are already on board, should probably be upkept, maintained, and made sure that everything is good to go, not demolished for coal-fired plants. But I prefer to go in the direction of things like solar, wind, and hydroelectric, simply because it's cheaper, and B, it's much faster to get online. It's much faster to get online versus having to wait, like 10 years before we get like all the nuclear plants on board. I believe the average time is about 10 years, which is something we do not have. Let's just put the waste in the yucky mountains. LFTR reactors eat nuclear waste. Huh. Gen 4 liquid nuclear, good. Yeah, like I said, the problem with nuclear is the cost and the time it takes for it to be on board versus having something like solar, wind, and hydroelectric, which can be put on board relatively quickly, relatively cheaply. Something that can be done right now. That being said, those that are already on board should be made sure to be upkept, I should say. Nuclear energy is a stun lock, true. Because like, I'm not 100% against it. I just don't want it to be used as a crutch from doing what is necessary. Does that make sense? I'm not exactly 100% against it. I'm just concerned about the time frame that we have, and I'm also concerned about it being used as a crutch to divert from solutions. That's my problem. But other than that, yeah, that's my take on it.
The planet.
Adaptation will only get the world so far.
The best way to deal with a 3-degree world is not to go to a 3-degree world.
Thank you.
That's why increasing efforts on mitigation are important. It's why working towards negative emissions that could bring down the temperature after it peaks are important. Once you get to a 3-degree world, you are in real, bad, global trouble.
The scale of change
Small
needed
nuclear plants can be built quicker and more of them. I'm just not sure. I'm just not sold 100%. There are 3 phases you go through while watching Captain Planet. The phase when you're a kid and you think it's most accurate representation of the world and oil companies are run by actual supervillains. The phase when you're a teenager and you think that was probably an exaggeration. And the adult phase when you're raised, holy fuck, we actually had 100% accurate. Yeah. I'll do a step forward. I'll do a step forward and say Ferngully. If there's any way to get radicalized on like environmental issues, watch Fern Gully. That's right, Astro. That used to be a thing, and it was turned out to be bad. Gen 4 reactor byproducts can advance medicine, and the waste and heat from them can be used to desalinate ocean water. Yeah, I think that should be like that. Things like that should be developed as a like side, parallel. What we should be doing is decoupling in every way, shape, or form away from fossil fuels. Full stop. Period. When I was a kid, they used yeah, exactly. But obviously, that was bad. Fern Gully got me. Yes, if you have like any bit of like, I guess like any bit of empathy whatsoever, and you watch Fern Gully, 100% chance that you will be radicalized. I'm still intrigued by thorium and salt reactors. Oh yeah, those are interesting technologies, but I don't know how fast or how close we are to get them on board as a widespread availability, which is again something that we need to consider. It's not a bad thing to work on like parallels, but the things that we can do now within the time that we have now is where we should be focusing our efforts, if that makes sense.
Of government so far means 3 degrees of warming is uncomfortably likely unless more is done. Despite existing pledges, greenhouse gas emissions are still set to rise by 16% from 2010 levels by 2030. The need to act has never been clearer. There's still time to reduce emissions so that a 3-degree world remains fiction rather than becoming fact.
But that depends on us. Okay?
Thanks for watching.
That depends on us, what we do, or I guess what we don't do. Right? Which turns my attention coming off climate talks, U.S. to hold huge crude sale in the Gulf. The U.S. Interior Department on Wednesday will auction vast oil and gas reserves in the Gulf of Mexico, estimated to hold up to 1.1 billion barrels of crude, the first such sale under President Joe Biden, and the harbinger of the challenges he faces to reach climate goals that depend on deep cuts in fossil emissions. The live-stream sale event invited energy companies to bid on drilling leases across 136,000 square miles, about twice the area of Florida. It will take years to develop the leases before companies start pumping crude. That means they could keep producing long past 2030, when scientists say the world needs to be well on its way to cutting greenhouse gas emissions to avoid catastrophic climate change. The auction comes after a federal judge in a lawsuit brought by Republican states rejected a suspension of fossil fuel sales that Biden imposed when he took office. The Democrat campaigned on promises to curb fossil fuels from public lands and waters, which included coal account for about a quarter of U.S. carbon emissions, according to the USGS survey. Yet, even as he's tried to cajole other world leaders into strengthening international efforts against global warming, Wednesday's sale illustrates Biden's difficulties gaining ground on the climate issues at home. The administration last week proposed another round of oil and gas lease sales in 2022. Montana, Wyoming, Colorado, and other western states. Interior Department officials proceeded despite concluding that burning the fossil fuels could lead to billions of dollars of potential future climate damages. We had Trump's unconstrained approach to oil and gas on federal lands and Biden's early attempt to pause the drilling. Now it looks like the Biden administration is trying to find a new policy. They're trying to be very cautious about undermining their fragile momentum on climate issues by selling oil leases to an area twice the size of Florida. This just gets better. That would be Celsius. This documentary is trying to illustrate what would happen if we continue our way, and if we go to 3 degrees Celsius. 1.5 was the ideal goal in trying to curb the more catastrophic versions of climate change. That's why 1.5 is constantly mentioned, and that's why 1.5 is all you hear, because that it would have been the ideal to keep the worst ends of climate change mitigated. It's like even politicians I want to be good, there's a billion issues that prevent them from doing something. Yeah, but I think this one's not that hard, right? Right, in Roblox, Hominem. There is no one you can vote in that will head off this disaster. Not one single person. Unfortunately, Astro, it requires a commitment, a political will and commitment to attempt to turn the corner on this or turn this ship around. But we do not see that on a wide enough scale, unfortunately. The Energy Bureau said in pre-sale documents released on Tuesday that it received bids on 307 tracks totaling nearly 2,700 square miles. That's the largest total for a single sale since Gulf-wide bidding resumed in 2017. 7 prior sales generated almost $1 billion in total revenue. Oh, thank God. Thank God. Thank God. Almost $1 billion in total revenue. Thank God. Environmental reviews of the latest sale conducted under former President Trump and affirmed under Biden reached an unlikely conclusion. Exacting and burning fossil fuels would result in fewer greenhouses than leaving it. Similar claims in 2 other cases in Alaska were rejected by federal courts after challenges from environmentalist climate scientist Peter Erickson's site works was cited by judges. In one of the cases, he said that the Interior Department's analysis had a glaring omission. It excluded greenhouse gases increases in foreign countries that results of having more Gulf oil enter the market. Right, like, wait. So if you're like, this is why, like, numbers don't lie, but numbers can say what I want them to say. Numbers don't lie, but numbers can say what I want them to say. You may say, well, we aren't the ones going to be increasing emissions, but who's buying it? And why are you flooding more oil into the markets? It will require us to do 2 things: vote in decently climate-friendly party into power, vote them in a super majority. Now both of these things are improbable, so yeah, we're kind of effed. Once the supply chain normalizes, the first things that need to happen on a large scale is adoption of EVs because they're safer and be cheaper in the internal combustion engine vehicles. In 2 to 3 years, it would decrease the amount of petroleum, which will cause a reduction in production. I think that's like on the smaller scale, to be honest, the smaller parts of the problem. That being said, we should address the ways we do transportation. That's not to take away the fact that transportation does have a, its own emission factor, but I think that the biggest parts is just straight up like the way we produce energy and the way we have our animal agriculture is the big ones, right? There's a huge disruption happening right now. Yeah. I don't disagree. I don't disagree. I'm saying that I don't believe that the transportation industry is more of a priority than trying to address things like how we get our energy for energy grids and how we do animal agriculture, right? But my beef. Like, I think that out of all of the industries, and where our focus should probably be in how we do energy, an immediate cease and of methane, which means plugging up all the leaks, which means addressing animal agriculture, so on and so forth. I mean, we can, in parallel, develop things to make the transportation industry better and more sustainable, up to and including EV vehicles, and up to and including biofuels, different ways of handling that. That's fine, but the immediate actions are the way we do our energy grids and animal agriculture, in my opinion. The math is extremely simple on this kind of stuff, said Ericsson, a senior scientist with the Stockholm Environmental Institute, a nonprofit research group. If new leases expand the global oil supply that has a proportional effect on emissions from burning oil. Therefore, giving out leases in Gulf of Mexico would increase global emissions. I mean, yeah. Yeah, just because we didn't do it directly doesn't mean emissions aren't going to increase because of the sales, because of the actions that we're taking here. Former upcoming sales spokesperson Melissa Schwartz said the Interior is conducting more comprehensive emission review than any prior administration. It's also appealing the court order that forced the resumption. Eric Melito, president of the National Ocean Industries Association, said he was uncertain that using the new approach would have changed the government's conclusion, since drilling for oil in other parts of the world is less efficient and hauling imports also add to carbon costs. Okay, but there are better ways to offset these things. The continued use of old analysis rankles drilling opponents who say Biden isn't following through on his climate pledges. Yeah, no kidding. We're talking about transitioning away from fossil fuel economy and they are selling a giant carbon bomb on a lease sale. Yeah. Some Democrats also objected to the sale. House Natural Resource Committee Chairman Raul Grijalva of Arizona said Biden needs to do better after promising to lead on climate issues but continuing a fossil fuel program with a long history of mismanagement. The Gulf of Mexico accounts for 15% of total U.S. crude production and 5% of its natural gas. Industry analysis have predicted that some heightened interest in Wednesday's sales since oil prices rose sharply over the past year. It's also a chance for companies to secure drilling rights before the administration or Congress can increase drilling fees and royalty fees. Hey, anything for a buck, right? Anything for a buck. Different companies have different approaches and different strategies. Some could think this might be the year to go big. Yeah. At the expense of the planet. That's okay. There's only one planet, so it's okay, right? You should probably do any type of experiments on the one planet we have. But yes, to your point, Silver Knight Dragon, I understand that we're having a massive problem, but I still think that like we can walk and chew gum at the same time. At some point, we can move and make our transportation systems more sustainable. The utmost priority should be decoupling ourselves in every way, shape, or form that we can. And I think our energy grid, which also trickles down to a whole bunch of other stuff, is priority, especially with animal agriculture, which also has a massive piece to play too. Like, I think like those are the areas that we need to be focusing on. They're going to end up selling that land back to cover their losses. Yeah, to who? This is all giga triggering me. Alright, so we gotta watch the cute animal video and try to finish the other thing. Here it is.
He was always curious. If we're on walks and Xena's sniffing something, he has to run up and see what she's so interested in.
It's like boiling a frog. We won't jump out of the pot before there's massive deaths, but even then, it's already too late. That's the whole point of the boiling frog analogy. But yes, you are correct.
What is it? What are we looking at? There's major sibling rivalry, and just anything that she has, he wants. So if she's playing with a toy, he runs up to her,
Aww.
He grabs the other end of the toy, and starts playing tug-of-war. There's major fear of missing out.
Aww.
Where's Pepe? Oh, there he is.
Aww.
He just made the funniest face.
Crows are unironically the mostest dope of birds. I love them. Climate change, yes, exactly. Sigma trillionaire rule: don't focus on fueling the deaths of billions of people. Focus on the grind. At least Exxon is selling their Texas fracking. Seems like a good sign. I don't trust ExxonMobil. Sorry. I don't really care. I think that at this point we can say that, screw them. I don't care.
You like bang or something?
They do that.
Crows are great, yeah.
Because they helps kill parasites.
It's just an overall self-care thing that crows do. Because he trusts us, he will do that anywhere in our yard.
Maybe, but the best thing that we can do to make sure that happens even faster is stop propping them up. Is stop giving them all these subsidies. Is stop like holding their hand. Let this industry die already. Jesus Christ.
When we first found him, he fell from a 100-foot tree.
Oh no.
We actually recorded his noises and then played them on speakers to see if maybe mom would come and check on the baby, but she didn't.
Yeah, that's true, Hominem, but I think they're dope. They're smart too. They're incredibly intelligent. They solve puzzles and everything. They're
Once I saw that
they're
he was
amazing.
taking his first steps, we took him on the ground. Our backyard was actually a great environment for him to explore more.
Thanks for helping us break down those dirt clods.
Instead of giving him food directly, it was, okay, here is a mealworm, and he would start pecking at it.
Good job.
We taught him to fly when he started developing flight feathers.
Correct, they're clearly just Jurassic Park raptors. Aww. The Corvid family of birds are the smartest birds,
It was a
yeah.
pretty cool experience to see him get the hang of things so quickly. His favorite spot to hide berries are my Crocs. If there's a wrinkle on my shirt, he will try to hide it in the wrinkle. It always makes me laugh because he's so smart. It amazes me that he has not learned reliable hiding spots.
Aww.
As he's gotten older, when we do give him food, instead of just eating all of it, he started taking it to make crow friends. So we give him good food and like take it to your friends. We started seeing him with one friend, then two friends, and now he's joined a family. He used to visit us daily. Now he visits us once a week.
Hi, Pepe. Hi, Pepe.
Aww.
We're visiting less often now. We missed you, Pepe. We missed you.
It's bittersweet seeing him become more independent, but as much as I enjoy his company, my goal from the beginning was make sure that he could live as normal of a crow life as possible.
Aww.
Seeing him adapt so well to new experiences, new challenges, is always puts a smile on my face.
Hi, Pepe. Okay.
I'm really appreciative of having that experience with him.
Aw. Love it. Love it. You can't just end an entire industry? Yes, I can. Dude, I thought this was like the free market, dude. If the business can't sustain itself, then let it die, right? So TLDR, really bad. Really bad. Not good. Not based. Really frustrating. Really frustrating. They built this country on coal, oil, and gas. We tried that in Germany in the 60s. Unions and the left-wing party blocked it. What, the ending of subsidies for fossil fuels? Alright folks, we're continuing our journey with this New York Times article regarding climate migrations. We saw earlier the video that also presented another Central American Guatemalan farmer. We also saw the story of Jorge earlier in this article, which was basically the same thing. A farmer who just can't grow crops anymore and is forced to leave because the alternative is starvation. Not a free market, social market. Let me earn profit unhindered until I totally crap my pants in and change my diet for myself. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Alright, folks, give me 1 second. I'm going to take my my little break, walk around the room, and I will be right back. Yeah, but see, that's not a good enough. Like, I understand that obviously as workers they may be skeptical, but the whole point would be to then offer the alternative and make sure that when we do and as we transition to renewable energy that they will still have jobs, because after all, we're going to need them to build the future. After all, we're going to need them to build the future. Right? Who's going to build that infrastructure? Who's going to upkeep all of these infrastructures? All of these new green renewable infrastructure, right? Who's going to upkeep it? Who's going to build it? It's going to be a lot of jobs. So yeah, you gotta pitch it to them that way. At least here and now. In my opinion, that's how we need to make sure that we make workers understand that, look, we can get you good union jobs building the future. Alright, folks, give me 1 second. I'm going to take a quick break, and I will be right back. See how much we can get through this. Yeah, pitch it to them like this. Jobs aren't gonna matter if the city you're in is underwater by the time you're 30. True. That's right. Right now we're stopping everything that involves coal, so no mining or burning in a few years. That's good. Just could have had it 30 to 40 years earlier. Yeah, a lot of us could have. It's frustrating. But here we are. And we're at the crossroads right now. And the decisions that we take or lack thereof are going to determine the future. So we're continuing our journey through this very good NYT article. North Africa's Sahel provides an example. In 9 countries stretching across the continent, from Mauritania to Sudan, extraordinary population growth and steep environmental decline are on a collision course. Past droughts, most likely caused by climate change, have already killed more than 100,000 people there, and the region with more than 150 million people and growing is threatened by rapid desertification, even more severe water shortages, and deforestation. Today's researchers at the UN estimate that some 65% of farmable lands have already been degraded. My deep fear, said Solomon Hassian, climate researcher and economist at the University of California, Berkeley, is that Africa's transition into a post-climate change civilization leads to a constant outpouring of people. The story is similar in South Asia, where nearly 1/4 of the global population lives. The World Bank projects that the region will soon have the highest prevalence of food insecurity in the world. While some 8.5 million people have already fled, resettling mostly in the Persian Gulf, 17 million to 36 million more people may be soon uprooted. World Bank found. If past patterns are a measure, many will settle in India's Ganges Valley. By the end of the century, heat waves and humidity will become so extreme that people without air conditioning will just simply die. Yeah. Yeah. If it is not drought and crop failures that force large numbers of people to flee, it will be the rising seas. We are now learning that climate scientists have been underestimating the future displacement from rising tides by a factor of 3. Yikes, which is the likely toll being some 150 million globally. New projections show high tides subsuming much of Vietnam by 2050, including most of Mekong Delta, now home to 18 million people, as well as parts of China, Thailand, most of southern Iraq, and nearly all of the Nile Delta, Egypt's breadbasket. Many coastal regions of the US are also at risk. Through all the research, rough predictions have emerged about the scale of total climate migration. They range from 50 million to 300 million people displaced, but the global data is limited, and uncertainty remains about how to apply patterns of behavior to specific people in specific places. Now, though, new research on both fronts have created an opportunity to improve the models tremendously. A few years ago, climate geographers from Columbia University and City University of New York began working with the World Bank to build a next-generation tool to establish plausible migration scenarios for the future. The idea was to build on Oppenheimer's style measure of response to the environment with other methods of analysis, including a gravity model, which assessed the relative attractiveness to destinations with the hope of mathematically anticipating where migrants might end up. The resulting report, published in early 2018, involved 6 European and American institutions and took nearly 2 years to complete. The bank's work targeted climate hotspots in the sub-Saharan Africa, South Asia, and Latin America, focusing not on the emergency displacement of people from natural disasters, but on their premeditated responses to what researchers call slow onset shifts in the environment. The frog in the pot. They are determined that as climate change progressed in just these 3 regions alone, as many as 143 million people would be displaced within their own borders, moving mostly from rural areas to nearby towns and cities. The study, though, wasn't fine-tuned to specific climatic changes like declining groundwater, and it didn't even try to address the elephant in the room. How would climate change? How would the climate push people to migrate across international borders? Yeah. Nice cat cam. Yeah, we got the kitty cat in studio. How's it going, Heat? Hope you're doing all right. We got the nice little cat cam just because she decided to hang out with us today in studio. So, little treat. I know it's not Saturday, but you know. The Times Magazine and ProPublica, with the support of the Pulitzer Center, hired an author of the World Bank report, Brian Jones, a geographer at Baruch College, to add layers of environmental data to its model, making it even more sensitive to climatic change and expanding its reach. Our goal was to pick up where the World Bank researchers left off in order to model for the first time how people would move between countries, especially from Central America and Mexico towards the US. First, we gathered existing datasets on political stability, agriculture, productivity, food stress, water availability, social connections, weather, and much more in order to approximate the kaleidoscope complexity of human decision-making. Oof. Then we started asking questions. If crop yields continue to decline because of drought, for instance, and people are forced to respond by moving, as they have in the past, can we see where they will go and what new conditions that might introduce? It's very difficult to model how individual people think or answer these questions using individual data points. Often the data doesn't simply exist. Instead of guessing what Jorge will do, and then multiplying that decision by the number of people in similar circumstances, the model looks across entire populations, averaging out trends in community decision-making based on established patterns, and then seeing how those trends play out in different scenarios. In all, we fed more than 10 billion data points in our model. Then we tested the relationship in the model retroactively, checking where historical cause and effect could be empirically supported, to see if the model's projections about the past matches what really happened. Once the model was built and layered with both approaches, economic and gravity, we looked at how people moved as global carbon concentrations increased in 5 different scenarios, which imagine various combinations of growth, trade, border control, among other factors. These scenarios have become standard among climate scientists and economists in modeling different pathways of global socioeconomic development. Only a supercomputer could efficiently process the work in its entirety, estimating migration from Central America and Mexico. In one case, required uploading our query to a federal mainframe housed in a building the size of a small college campus outside Cayenne, Wyoming, run by the National Center of Atmospheric Research, where even there it took 4 days for the machine to calculate its answer. its answers. A more detailed description could be found here in ProPublica. Aw, man. Okay, good. Stop it. I was reading somewhere that the resource wars are a very possible scenario if climate change goes full all out, and my first thought was, holy fuck, yeah. Here's the ProPublica link. I'm here to counter thoughts to my own to get a better view of the whole picture. I think he does good. I like his voice and opinions aren't far gone that I dismiss him instantly and understand where he comes from. Well, yeah, I mean, like, it depends on who you interact with. But no, this person is a right-winger, more right than left, but also have some points I would consider pretty left-wing. Depends on what you consider, at the end of the day, what left is, right? It depends on what left-wing means to you, because here in America, left-wing literally means like the Democratic Party to some people. The results are built around a number of assumptions about relationships between real-world developments that haven't all been scientifically validated. The model also assumes complex relationships, say how drought and political stability relate to each other, remain consistent and linear over time, when in reality we know the relationships will change, but not how. Interesting. Many people will also be trapped by their circumstances, too poor or vulnerable to move, and the models have a difficult time accounting for them. Yeah, like, I mean, the TLDR of this is obviously you're not going to be able to account 100%. But you will be able to get a good kind of trend of how climate change is going to how climate change is going to affect the global south, essentially. All this means is that our model is far from definitive, but every one of these scenarios it produces points to a future in which climate change, currently a subtle disrupting influence, becomes a source of major disruption, increasingly driving the displacement of vast populations. How climate moves people. The mayor de Jesus Cortés Barrera moved to the outskirts of San Salvador 6 years ago after his life in the rural western edge of El Salvador, just 90 miles of Jorge's village in Guatemala, collapsed. Now she sells pupusas on a block not far from where teenagers stand guard for the Mara Salvatrucha gang. Yikes. When we met last summer, she was working 6 days a week, earning $7 a day or less than $200 a month. She relied on the kindness of her bosses, who gave her some free meals at work, but everything else for her and her infant son, she had to provide for herself. Cortés commuted before dawn from San Marcos, where she lived with her sister in a cheap room off a pedestrian alleyway, but her apartment still cost $65 each month, and she sent $75 home to her parents each month, enough for beans and cheese to feed the 2 daughters she left them with. We're going backward, she said. Her story, that of an uneducated, unskilled woman from the farm roots who can't find high-paying work in the city and falls deeper into poverty, is a familiar one. A classic pattern of in-country migration all around the world. San Salvador, meanwhile, has become notorious as one of the most dangerous cities in the world, a capital in which gangs have long controlled everything from the majestic colonial streets of its downtown squares to the offices of politicians who reside in them. It is against the backdrop of war, violence, hurricanes, and poverty that 1 of 6 El Salvador citizens have fled for the United States over the course of the last decades, with some 90,000 Salvadorians apprehended at the U.S. border in 2019 alone. So, I mean, you could see the problems that climate change is going to exacerbate here. It's a shame because before Reagan, America used to resemble Europe a lot, even with Republican presidents who were firm New Dealers. I don't know about that. Nixon was the president who established the APA, but Reagan and Murdoch came along and effed everything up. Yeah, but even then, I don't know. I don't know. So here we have, again, the same, I'm trying to like get through as much of this as possible. The same scenario, a person whose crops got destroyed by climate change. Which caused her to make the decision to leave. Here we can see how climate change can act as what the Defense Department officials sometimes refer to as a threat multiplier. Of course, it exacerbates things, but in some things, especially social, the US is pretty left-wing. In theory, you guys have a pretty liberal stance on abortions. Those rules are far stricter in basically every country in the EU. I'm not sure about that. I wouldn't know what the stances, I guess, rules are in the EU. No idea. And I guess it also depends on where you are in the EU. For Cortez, the threat could not have been more dire. After 2 years in Ahuachapang, a gang-connected hitman knocked on Cortez's door and took her husband, whose ex-girlfriend was a gang member, roadblocking him in broad daylight a block away. Yikes. Yeah, so TLDR, definitely climate change is a big problem. Reagan was a world heavyweight cutbag, and I hope that he's running in hell if there is any. May Kissinger join him soon. Yeah. Well, he is getting up there in age, right? Alright, folks, it is 11:28. Unfortunately, that is all the time I have today. I do appreciate everybody here. Thank you, Darknet. I appreciate that. Thank you for all the new follows. Thank you, Alio, for the biddies. I do see some offline follows. Minute Dragon, OpenGL, Panorama. Thank you for the follows. I appreciate that. As always, on your way out, don't forget to hit the follow button. We do stream Monday through Thursday, 9 a.m. to roughly about 11:20-ish a.m. Monday through Thursday. Saturdays, we do Saturday Catterdays with the co-host. As always, please stay safe. Please take care of each other. Love y'all, and I hope to see you guys in the next one. See ya! Alright, folks, hang tight. Have a good day. You too, Alio. You too. Don't forget to follow Alio as well. Sorry about that. Hang tight, folks. Today seems like a Ben day. Alright, folks, hang tight. We're heading out in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Here we go. See ya.